The Blind Kitchen logo appears. Fade to black.
Hello, and welcome to the Blind Kitchen. People often ask me, how can you cook ground meat when you can't see what's going on in the pan clearly? I'm here to tackle that problem today. Now, there are two types of ground meat that have different qualities. So the first one we'll talk about is ground beef. Ground beef is probably the safer one to cook because you can serve ground beef to your family rare. The flip side of that is ground beef often comes with a very high fat content, and getting rid of the extra fat you don't want becomes the issue. Today, I'm choosing to cook ground turkey. It's the same as ground chicken. The same things apply. We're going to have spaghetti tonight. Now, with ground turkey or ground chicken, the difference is, number one, you have to cook it to a minimum of 165 degrees in order to keep your family safe. A talking thermometer is not going to help you with ground meat, but there are other ways for you to know. The other thing is ground turkey and ground chicken have a very low fat content. So how to work with their low fat content is also going to be covered in this video. An important consideration in browning any type of ground meat is the selection of your pan. Three things should be happening. One is it should probably be stainless steel. Mine is about 8 inches around, and it has a very heavy bottom for consistent heating while cooking. And it also is a deep saute pan, which means it has 3 walls. It does not have slope sides like most pans do, because when you're stirring small bits of hot food around in a pan, I consider those slope sides off ramps for the food. If you do this deep saute pan, again, mine's about 3-inch walls, I can move the meat around comfortably without fearing of it going outside of the pan. Because the ground turkey has such a low fat content, I have got to add fat to this pan in order to be able to cook it properly. And this is how I'm going to do it. First of all, I need to melt some butter. So I'm going to turn my pan on so it can start to get warm while I add my fats to it. So I have it over low heat here, low to medium. I'm going to reach over here on my counter and I'm going to grab, it's about a tablespoon of butter. It's 2 of the butter pats that I cut with my butter slicer earlier. I'm going to drop those in the pan so they can start melting. Now, the second fat I'm going to add to this pan is a tablespoon of olive oil. And I'm going to use my auto measure spout. It's sitting on top of the bottle, and I'm just going to let it go in the pan, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Okay, so that's 1 tablespoon of butter. We love our auto measure spout. And now I'm going to check the pan to make sure it's centered. Oop, I think I need to move it forward a little bit more. And I can feel that the pan is getting warm, so that's good. And the reason I added these 2 types of fats is, number one, the butter is the more flavorful fat as a rule, but it has a low smoke point, which means it's going to burn quite easily when cooking. But by adding the olive oil to it, which has a higher smoke point, the 2 fats mix together, and that extends the life of the butter in the pan. So I'm getting the best of both worlds. Now, I'm going to stir in this pan, and when I first put the spoon in here, I could feel the butter because it was cold and hard, but now I can't feel it anymore. And I want this pan to be cold for the next step of this. So because I can't feel it, oh, I can smell it's definitely in there, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the pan right now, and then I'm going to leave it here to cool off, and then we're going to do the next step. So let's talk turkey. Now that my pan has cooled enough to the touch, it's a little bit warm, but it's cool enough that I can touch it. Now I'm going to start to actually work with the ground turkey. Now the secret to making good ground meats is to make sure that all the pieces are consistent sizes so they cook at the same rate. If I have a big chunk of turkey, like a turkey meatball, and then a little crumble of turkey, the little ones are going to burn and be overdone before the big chunk even finishes cooking. So the important thing is to break it into consistent sizes. It's very difficult to do that with vision loss. You can try and break it up what's in the pan, but once it's in the pan and once it's hot, you lose a lot of your tactile information. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to smell this meat. Raw meat has a very distinctive, different smell than cooked meat. So I have now this fresh in my mind. What does this raw meat smell like? So I'm going to use that memory as I'm cooking. It's not the only thing I'm going to gauge for doneness, but it's going to be one of them. Now, the other thing is I'm going to go ahead right now and I'm going to put this turkey into this cold pan, and I'm not going to turn the pan on until my fingers have determined that all the pieces are the same size. So I just dropped it into the pan. It's a little square, half a pound of ground turkey. And I'm actually going to go ahead and use my fingers to break the turkey into small pieces. And I'm not going to turn the stove on. Well, first of all, I got to wash my hands. But then I'm not going to turn the stove on until I know for sure that this turkey is in small pieces that are quite consistent. They won't be perfectly sized, but it'll be close. And I think these are all about the same size, kind of the size of a marble, I'd say, about that. And that'll be good. They'll break up a little bit more while I'm cooking, but there's no huge ones and no small ones. So it's in the bottom of the pan. I'm going to go wash my hands, and then we'll come back and turn the heat on. So I just washed my hands, and now we're going to start to cook the meat. You can season it in any way you want, and my husband happens to like black pepper, and so I am going to just use this pepper cellar and sprinkle a little bit on there. Okay, we can always add more later if we like it. Now I'm going to turn on the heat. My wooden spoon is in the pan, and I'm going to start it out on medium, and I'm going to be listening. Now remember, you're not going to be hearing a whole lot of sizzling because there's not a whole lot of fat in the pan. If it was hamburger, it might be more depending on the amount of fat. So now I'm going to wait for the pan. The important thing is I don't want this meat to stay in contact with the pan, any of it, at any given amount of time. I want to keep it moving so it doesn't burn. I'm smelling, I'm listening, I'm constantly touching the top of the pan to make sure it's centered. If it's hot, equally hot on the top rim all the way around, then I know the pan is covering the heat source. And that's a comfortable place to be. So I'm constantly checking. So it's definitely starting to take on a different smell. Turn it up just a little bit more. If I'm hearing it, you can hear that I'm moving it around the pan. None of it's falling out. I'm sure of that because of the walls of the pan. And again, that's getting a little louder than I like, so I'm going to turn it down just a little bit more. And I'm not searing a steak here. Caramelization is not playing a piece in this game. Some people would argue that you have to get it to like where you sear a steak to get that flavor. That is not the texture or flavor we're going for. We want a ground meat for like chili or spaghetti, and keeping it lower and slower without getting it crispy and crunchy and coarse is the best way to cook it for this application. So I'm listening. I'm hearing noise constantly now. Do you hear that? So I know I am on the good side of cooking this. And because I want to add spaghetti sauce to this, I'm going to go ahead and turn this off now. I feel confident and safe that my family could eat it as is, but I have that second chance because I'm adding a marinara sauce to it, that it can cook even more. Okay, I think it's good. We're getting ready to add the marinara sauce that I made earlier today. But before I go to the next step of cooking dinner for my family, I want to circle back to the ground beef problem and the excessive fat. Ground beef often has a lot of fat, way more than most people like to ingest. So there's two ways that I have for you to get rid of that fat. The first one is to use a locking lid pan, which we sell in the Blind Kitchen. These are wonderful because the lid locks on so it can't fall off while you're draining the meat, but it has a draining system that is perfect even for holding small pieces of ground beef, that it can just let them come out and the food stays inside the pan. If you don't happen to have one, The other thing you can do is to take a paper towel. Important though, wait until it cools. Anytime you touch hot grease, it can burn you because it's going to keep coming away with your finger and it's going to continue to burn. So you want to make sure that it isn't too hot, but once you're comfortable with it, take a wad of paper towels and just dab the top of the meat. The towels will work like a sponge to soak up that extra grease, and you can stop whenever you feel like your meat has the right amount of fat for your family. Fat is flavor. It's not all a bad thing, but too much can be. So now you know all about browning ground meat. Thank you for watching, and until next time, happy cooking.
She smiles towards the camera. Fade to black. The Blind Kitchen logo appears. Fade to black. Neo Creative Productions logo appears. The logo fades to black.